Yo, guys, welcome back again today. And today we're going to be talking about the oldest woman African American construction management firm. The McKissack McKissack Company has designed thousands of buildings during its operation. This story starts in West Africa, with the first McKissack, Moses, being from West Africa. He was sold into slavery to William McKissack and took his last name like most African Americans who were enslaved. His Scottish slave master taught him the art of laying bricks. During his life, he became a master builder and married in 1822. He would go on to have 14 kids. One of his children, Gabriel, who was born in 1840, would go on to learn and continue his dad's trade of building. Around the age of 25, Gabriel's father would pass away in 1865. Gabriel would go on to marry as well to a woman named Dolly Ann. Him and his wife would get married in Pulaski, Tennessee. Gabriel and his wife were going to have two sons, Moses McKissack III, who was born in 1879, and Calvin McKissack, born in 1890. Gabriel would go on to begin the family business in Tennessee, and he would design and build the company's structures. His son Moses III would learn these skills from him, and Moses would get his education from the Pulaski Colored High School. Moses would go on to work with a local architect company, assisting in building construction, design, and drawing. In 1895 to 1902, he worked as a superintendent for construction and built homes in Mount Pleasant, Pulaski, and Columbia, Tennessee. 3 years later, he would go to Nashville, Tennessee to build a home for the Dean of Architecture and Engineering at Vanderbilt University. He then landed more jobs in the area and in the same year opened his first office in the Napier Court building, establishing his own name independent of his father's company. His first major commission he landed was building the library at the Fisk University campus. This was a huge moment. Secretary of War William Howard Taft would go on to lay the cornerstone of the building. Moses would design one of the first major structures in America and was one of the first African Americans to do so. In 1909, he would start to officially advertise as an architect. The city would list him as a colored architect, a term used at the time for African Americans. He would be listed as the 19th architect out of the other 18 in the city. In 1920, Moses would design many buildings all over the city of Nashville, and his reputation would start to be spread statewide. One of his most significant builds was the Hubbard House at 1109 First Avenue. Moses was assisted by his brother in most builds. Calvin, who went off to school in Massachusetts on the East Coast, would attend Fisk University from 1905 to 1909. Calvin would soon move and make his firm in 1912 in Dallas, Texas. He constructed churches and other buildings in the area. Back in Tennessee, Moses became superintendent of industries and architectural drawing at Tennessee Agricultural Industrial State Normal School. In 1918, Moses would become director of the Industrial Arts Department at Pearl High School. This would make him the first colored executive secretary for colored schools in Tennessee. He would resign in 1922 and join his brother Calvin to partner and create McKissack McKissack firm. These brothers are actually the first African American architects in the United States of America. They are among the first registered architects in the state of Tennessee as well, and the registrative law was put into effect in 1922. In 1924, the brothers would move into 2 floors at Morris Memorial Building. The firm still maintains its offices there till this day. The brothers also received their first contract from the National Baptist Convention USA, Inc., and received many contracts after. Such contracts like designing the Tennessee State Library in 1927 and building the headquarters for the state's only black insurance company in 1929. Between 1930 and 1950, the firm would build and receive business licenses to do business in such states as South Carolina, Florida, Mississippi, and Georgia. In 1942, the firm received national recognition and secured a $5.7 million contract for the 99th Pursuit Squadron Air Base in Tuskegee, Alabama. This was a huge contract. $5.7 million in 1942 was a lot of money. This was the largest contract ever granted to any African American company by the USA government. During the Franklin Roosevelt's administrative era, who was the president of the United States at the time, the brothers received the Spalding Medal. Moses was even appointed to the White House Conference on Housing Problems. This led the company to design several housing projects. In 1952, Moses would die, and Calvin would become president and general manager of the company. Calvin ran the company until his death in 1968. Moses' third son, William DeBerry McKissack, would take over. He was the fourth generation in line of McKissacks. William, Leatrice McKissack's husband, was the CEO of the company at this time. William would soon be hospitalized due to a stroke in 1983, and on the same day, his twin daughters graduated from his former school, Howard University. Leatrice would soon have to make an especially important decision. At the time, she was a housewife, and she soon realized that she would have to either sell or take over the business. And at the time, many businesses wanted to buy this organization. She would go on to take over the company. She had a bachelor's degree in math and a master's in psychology. This would also be no easy task with an industry dominated by men. Many companies wanted to buy McKissack McKissack, and on her first day in the office at a meeting for the private company's board, the shareholders wanted her to sell the business and take the offers on the table. Her nerves were really getting worked and overwhelmed, so in her husband's office usually was alcohol, and so she drank some with a little airplane on the desk while she made up her mind. Her two daughters would back her up. Both her daughters, Cheryl and Daryl, had degrees in civil engineering and structural engineering. Leatrice would take reins of the company and took over millions of dollars in projects the company was in the middle of. She also went over the financials of the company and the operations on a day-to-day basis. She was not pleased with her findings and soon received resistance from other men in the company. The vice president threw papers at her during an argument, and she fired him. A receptionist passed on some projects to complete the company's books. She fired her. She also found thousands of dollars of receipts of finished clients' work that had not been sent out to them. These problems seemed to have started before she arrived, but her being a woman did not make it any easier. She would go on to fire all employees except for two. These two employees were women, and she put Claudette Howe in charge of handling the money while she went out to get clients. Leatrice knew close to nothing about engineering and architecture and actually bought a firm and moved them to Nashville from Memphis, Tennessee. Her third daughter, Andrea, would leave her job running an engineering firm in Detroit to come home and get her mom up to speed on the industry. It took Leatrice months to meet with all the company's current clients, and she also was taking care of her husband at the same time. Her husband would never return to the business, and her daughter suggested sending him to DC to regain his independence. William would go to DC with a pacemaker, but did relearn how to drive in DC. When he returned home, he even got a new car. He would go out with his friends, travel, and do other activities. In 1988, Howard University honored William as an architecture, and the family would skip Christmas to attend. Unfortunately, he would pass away in the hotel the week of his honor ceremony. Leatrice would go on to do projects such as National Civil Rights Museum in Memphis, Tennessee, and other projects as well. She stated that the company actually didn't profit from this project, but it meant a lot to her and the company to memorialize Martin Luther King in the museum. The museum is right across from the Lorraine Motel, where Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in 1968. Leatrice stayed head of the company for the next 12 years before she retired. Cheryl would take over the company, and while her mother ran the company, she would fly back and forth from New York City weekly to help her mother with the business. Cheryl would open a McKissack McKissack office in New York City in 1990. This is where she grew the business and focused on construction management. Her sister, Daryl, would open up a Washington branch which focused on architecture. These companies both had the same name, but they were also independent from one another, but they also would still work with one another as well, even though they kept the same family name. Cheryl would talk to her mom often, and her mom would eventually tell her she was sick of the architects fighting with the engineers. So Cheryl dissolved the original business and paid the shareholders. She then closed all the offices in the South and reestablished the company as the sole owner in the North. The company would go on to work on projects such as the Barclays Center in Brooklyn and Columbia University Manhattanville campus. The company also established an Office of Community Employment in Harlem in 2012. This office connects construction-related jobs with residents. One of the company's long-term projects is the Manhattan Transportation Authority Capital Program. The company would go on to leave the sole owner business structure for a 6-people board format. This would include both sisters and the mother as well. Daryl also continued to run her independent company, yet still contributing to the family company in Washington, D.C. She also took part in many projects in Washington, D.C., such as the new Martin Luther King project in the area. This makes this the oldest African-American architectural firm and construction company in America. The company also has contracts with the state of New York and New York City, and is also working on current projects such as the new terminal at JFK Airport. The daughters were taught how to draw by their father, and when she showed them how to trace detail and understanding the right material being shown on the paper. The sisters also have daughters who might possibly be the next generation that own the family business, but if not, they say they are waiting for the grandkids. So yo guys, today we learned about the oldest woman-owned African-American construction management firm, and I thought you guys should definitely know about this. So you guys, please like, subscribe, turn on the bell notification so you can get all my videos. Like me on all social medias, which is Afric Network, which is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, SoundCloud, and Snapchat. Each one teach one. Always learn from each other, always love each other, and always try to be diplomatic with each other. Yo, until next time, keep building. Peace. One love.